So I was inspired by some folks on Facebook to try to put a USB port in my 1970 TR6. I've made a video of it, so maybe you can learn some lessons the way I learned as I went along. This is the unit I purchased on Amazon. It is a USB and USB-C port with a small LED light around the edges. I decided, based on what I saw on social media, to try to put it into the ashtray. I just thought that was a really clever idea. But I did have to deal with that cigarette snuffer spring inside. You'll see that's attached by 2 rivets, which I realized I could probably just drill out. We'll get to that in a bit. This is the unit itself out of the package, the real thing. It's got 2 spades on the bottom, a bronze one and a silver one. Here are the 2 wires that came with it. Red, I assumed, was hot. The black would be the ground. It had circle connectors on them. Cut the red wire, circle connector off, kept the black one. You see this nut spins right off, comes off. I would use that to measure the size of the hole I needed in the bottom of my ashtray. I just very simply traced it. You'll see a circle here. Now, it was a little bit off center, I discovered later, but that was easy to fix. Here I am in my workshop. I've got the ashtray in my workmate, getting ready to drill out the 2 tiny rivets that hold that snuffer in place. You'll also note some rust there. Here it is after the operation. There is the snuffer off to the side and simply 2 holes where the rivets used to be. Now I started drilling a series of holes from the smallest bit up to the largest metal bit I had, which was a 1/2 inch bit. Now you can see there that that 1/2 inch bit isn't nearly big enough to accommodate the USB port, so I was going to have to use something else to make it bigger. What I did was I got my Dremel tool with a metal cutting blade, and I would cut basically pie slices into this. 3 lines that would result in 6 V-shaped pieces of metal that I could then use the metal cutter to remove. It left some jagged edges, so my next step was to get a grinding bit in the Dremel tool and smooth those edges out. While I was at it, I took a metal brush and I removed the rust that was to be found in various spots, both inside and outside the ashtray. You can see that here I did a bit more after this to remove some remaining rust. And then, using a craft saw, something you might use to cut balsa wood for a project, I sawed off the 2 edges of the USB port, careful not to cut off the circle of LED light. And then I went about painting it, and I used 2 different paints. I used a flat black primer, and then I used a glossier satin finish for the exposed parts of the ashtray, both the outside and the inside. You'll see the underside is a bit duller. That's where I simply used the primer. But it's looking pretty good. The next thing I did was simply fit the USB device into the ashtray. Now it was a little bit snug, but not so snug that I couldn't get it in there with just a little bit of wiggling. Pulled it through there, and it's a nice fit. Next, you put the nut on. Just spin it on. It served its purpose as a tracing device, and then I snugged it in there. You'll see I left a little rubber dust cap on. I figured that couldn't hurt. If I want to cut it off at some point, I guess I probably can, but nice, secure fit and ready to go into the car. Now, for wiring, what I did was I used the bracket that holds the heater cable to the underside of the dash to attach my ground, and I wired the hot part to the wiper circuit because it switched. And I wanted it switched because that LED light inside, which you'll see here, would be on all the time if I used any other continuous circuit. So there it is. The key is in the on position. You'll see that LED light glowing. And in a minute, I'll reach through the steering wheel, switch it off, and you'll see that the LED goes out. My install was a success. I hope that was helpful to you. Leave some comments. Let me know. Thanks.